As important and as useful as Giordano Bruno's memory improvement books still are hundreds of years after their publication, that doesn't mean they're problem-free. In fact, there are 3 ways that Bruno is not only dead wrong about the Memory Palace technique, he's wrong in ways that have made people fail when they could easily succeed with better information. Want to know what these errors are and how to fix them? Then remember this. Content may be king, but context is God, and we're getting started with both right now for the success and sovereignty of your memory's crown and country. This is Dr. Anthony Metivier from MagneticMemoryMethod.com inviting you to hit that thumbs up for the love of memory. And if you're new here and want free material about intermediate and advanced mnemonics, get subscribed now so you don't miss a thing. The future of memory training is a beautiful place, and all the more so when you see it, as our community does, through the lenses of the past. On the Shadows of the Ideas is one of my favorite books by Giordano Bruno, and typically the one most students of memory read. However, first appearing in print around 1582, Shadows is not necessarily the best, and that's for a few reasons. First of all, it's probably Bruno's earliest memory book. This means that a lot of the ideas are in development. We know this for a few reasons. For one thing, Bruno uses the term clavis magna to describe the memory technique itself, yet he also talks about a forthcoming clavis magna, or the Great Key, a book which will contain the ultimate technique he either wasn't ready to teach or, as I think it more likely, hadn't practiced teaching memory enough to describe what he had in mind. Also, Bruno started incorporating the memory wheels of Ramon Llull, and this may have sidetracked him somewhat. He also spent time writing satirical plays, scientific works, and attacks on the Catholic Church. All things combined, Clavis Magna, or the Great Key, would never appear as a book because Bruno was imprisoned and burned at the stake before he could complete it. Yet, Bruno refers to it again and again throughout most of his memory books, and there is the distinct feeling that he is gradually building and refining his memory systems. And this makes sense, because memory techniques are always in beta. They are like open source software that you not only have to download into your mind, but must adapt and evolve in order to use them. Bruno is quite open to this feature and frequently repeats variations of statements. If another approach tempts you, attempt it. The notion of temptation here is very telling, and Bruno uses it on purpose. Long before smartphones and mass media, people had shiny new memory training syndrome. Instead of completing one course of memory training, they would gather new ones, endlessly hoping and wishing and praying that somehow the memory improvement they seek would magically drop into their lives without doing anything. Bruno also points frequently to how lazy people are, and in another book called The Seal of Seals, helps all of us out with ideas for developing the kind of moral compass and self-motivating skills that can keep you out of such ruts. You can learn all about those biggest tips in our community's video on Ars Combinatoria, or the art of combination. Just as Bruno's memory techniques were clearly in development in Shadows, so too was his philosophy. Those matters may not and need not concern you if you just want to learn the memory techniques, but you're missing out on something truly special. And Bruno clearly thought these ideas to be worth your time because he intentionally surrounds the memory training with philosophical exegesis, and he often buries, disguises, and hides the most powerful aspects of the techniques in those passages. This is not merely for the point of being difficult on purpose and making sure that unqualified students don't get their hands on the techniques. There is that element to it, as well as Bruno being a poet and artist using certain literary conventions of his time. But I think there are 2 other elements at play. First, Bruno often appears to be writing for people who are planning to teach these techniques. He writes to you in a sophisticated way that seems to assume prior knowledge, both of philosophy and the Memory Palace tradition. Second, Shadows is dedicated to King Henry III of France, and the dedication ends by saying that on the Shadows of the Ideas is yours to look on with favor, examine maturely and judiciously, that you will be seen as eminently generous, powerful, and wise. I don't think this is sycophancy. Bruno knows that Henry already knows about memory techniques and probably tutored him in those skills. Thus, after reading on the Shadows of the Ideas, Henry will not only use the techniques better, he'll naturally be perceived as smarter thanks to the outcomes of using memory techniques while learning, but also when teaching them to others, as he almost certainly would have while currying favor in his circle. So Bruno a sycophant? No, but King Henry III? Possibly. But even if Bruno was indulging in flattery, the text of Shadows still delivers on the promise for those already knowledgeable about memory techniques. You will indeed learn to use memory techniques better by reading this book and be a better teacher of them. The only trouble is, there are at least 3 terrible pieces of advice, and the first one is a doozy. Bruno says on page 47 of the hardback Greer translation that it is not possible to communicate all things by images, since many of the things that are to be memorized can neither be imagined nor made into effigies, nor are they similar to anything that can be linked indirectly to an image or effigy. The second point may be true in some cases, but overall, Bruno is factually incorrect and later contradicts this point in future books. If you look carefully at On the Composition of Images and 30 Statues, this point is made irrelevant, and used well, the techniques in Shadow also render the point irrelevant. I think Bruno is, at this point in Shadows, merely repeating a lot of dogma from earlier books in the memory tradition. When he asks us to focus our mnemonic strategies based on a division which states that things that signify can be expressed by signs and things that can be imagined can be expressed by images, he's towing a particular line that belongs to what used to be called ars quadrata. This means basically a straight and static application of the techniques. But the power of Bruno's teaching overall is how it helps you use ars rotunda, which is round, dynamic, and more like nature itself. To do this, all you need to see is that signs are images, and they are not only images, but images that can unlock other images. Take the letter S, for example. S is a graphic image that tells us to make a particular sound or produce certain words in our minds when it is linked to other letters. Put an S on the chest of Clark Kent and you get the image of Superman, and not only that, but Lois Lane, Smallville, Metropolis, Lex Luthor, and all kinds of incredibly powerful mnemonic devices. It works in reverse too, because Brainiac includes all the letters of his name, which unfold into Brad Pitt, Ricky Martin, Adam Sandler, and so on. I don't know exactly why Bruno is bothering with this distinction, but again, the ideas are in development. I hope seeing things in the light of greater context helps you out. It has certainly helped me unlock the power of these techniques. Even more astounding is that Bruno says pictures is the most appropriate word for using memory techniques because we enhance them in ways akin to filling paintings with colors. He then flattens writing as something minimal because it has small forms like letters. Now, I get what he means because he's thinking about layers. For example, we learn compounding using the Cave-Coggs formula in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, which is like adding layers in stages when necessary, as Bruno suggests. But there are 2 problems. As we have already seen, an individual letter on a page can be tapped for nuclear levels of effect. So not only S becomes Superman, but the entire DC universe if you want. Heck, you can let it trigger Marvel, Disney, and whatever else if you please. Second, writing can also be layered. There are not only palimpsests, but wonderful ways to practice memory techniques while layering images over words as you read or listen to material. So you already have a clue as to how that works, and more is coming. So don't forget to hit that thumbs up and get involved in the conversation so I know you want more training videos like this one. And before getting to our final problem and its fix, thanks as always to our channel members and those in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, or both. You make this initiative possible, and everyone on Team Magnetic is grateful. And although it is very hard work, because it is hard, we feel honored. If you want to support this channel, click join to become a channel member or grab the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass so the truly next level memory benefits can start to flow for you and others in the world. After all, as Bruno tells us in perhaps the clearest terms he ever used, memorizing for yourself is a fast path to suffering, but memorizing so that you might serve others guarantees bliss. See the Seal of Seals for more on that matter. Bruno strangely discounts the memory palace technique, or method of loci, which is effectively the same thing, including other terms like mind palace, Roman room, and journey method. His quibble seems to be that this technique requires you to memorize a number of locations. Well, this is wrong on 2 counts. First, the memory wheels he teaches are nothing but multiple locations. You can certainly use Ars Combinatoria without explicit reference to location, but we know now, thanks to neuroscience covered in books like The Case for Mental Imagery, just how central location is to all learning. Later, Bruno himself intuits where in the brain certain information is stored. This is an astonishing feat given how little was known about the brain during the Renaissance, let alone the neuroscience of memory. But here in Shadows, he is way off. Not only are Bruno's memory wheels a kind of memory palace, but in 30 Seals he starts with the field as a memory palace, and 30 Statues relies heavily on locations. In Shadows, you learn about movable memory associations, and since movement can only take place in space, I'm not sure why Bruno muddies the waters here. But now you can read this book for the good stuff it contains and avoid this potentially destructive bit of bad advice, keeping in mind again that perhaps Bruno is just trying to help old King Henry sound clever. Well, maybe it worked, but both Bruno and this king are dead, and many of Bruno's books of memory are still alive, so remember, context is God. Read as much as you can, and take courses too, such as the free memory kit and course available to you now at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Grab it now and get started in a dynamic and well-rounded way. It will help make sure you're not wasting your time struggling to memorize your memory palaces. That is absolutely not necessary, and completing this course ensures you avoid the irritating failure that can occur when memory palaces are created incorrectly. Now you might be wondering, is the magnetic memory method the clavis magna Bruno never got around to writing? Obviously not. But I have long speculated what that book might have covered, and feel it's probably going to be the closest thing we're going to get for some time to come. Bruno was a great teacher of memory, but more importantly, he was a great marketer of a set of techniques that challenge those who need them the most to bring their best game before they are ready. And all signs suggest he marketed in the right way. After all, we're still reading him. And as you now know, he wrote about memory without being ready to write about it. He knew, as we must know, that there is no state of being ready. There is only the now. And I believe that the great key Bruno never wrote was there all along. The key is to take action. Learn as you go, and when it feels hard, feel honored precisely because you show up anyway. Bruno's wrong on certain points. I'm surely wrong on many things too, as all reasonable humans know and humbly admit themselves to be. But when we set the monkey mind chatter aside and just keep studying and practicing these glorious memory techniques, then and only then, we are 100% in the right. Capito?